Welcome back to the Life Work podcast from Williams Baptist University. Today we're continuing our conversation with Professor Heather Parson, Assistant Professor of Business and Chair of the Department of Business at WBU. In part 2, Heather talks about choosing Williams, discovering a love for finance, leading nonprofits, and eventually following God's call into the classroom here. She also shares how her understanding of trust, calling, and God's timing has deepened over the years. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, we'd really encourage you to go back and hear the episode first. It gives a powerful backstory that makes today's conversation even more meaningful. For now, let's jump into part 2 of Dr. Norman's conversation with Professor Heather Parson.
Welcome back to the Life Work podcast. We are going to continue our conversation with Heather Parson. And so in our last episode, we got you through high school, maybe? Did we get you through that in your life journey? Okay.
Yes, senior year in high school.
Okay, so now you're getting ready to graduate and you're looking for the next step. Tell us about Heather's next step.
Well, life after high school, there was never an option to not go on to higher education. Education, as I mentioned previously, was always ingrained very deeply in my family. I had great aunts and uncles that were teachers and school administrators, and it was just the expectation that you were going to school. But also during that period of time, my dad was also back in school again. So
really,
yes, he has many degrees, and so he was living higher ed at the same time that I was living higher ed again. And so, as I mentioned previously, I kind of thought that accounting was the path that I wanted to go on. You know, I liked watching the checkbook numbers and money management. And so as a senior in high school, I was planning to go to a sister institution in the state and was going to major in accounting. And I had planned kind of their preview days. It was a extra long weekend preview day. It was 4 days, if I remember, a Thursday through Sunday, to where seniors really just kind of get acclimated to campus in the fall semester of your senior year. And my parents took me and dropped me off and came back and picked me up on Sunday. And I had a great time while I was there, but it just didn't feel right. And so I was very confused because I just knew that that's what I was going to do next. And one of my best friends was scheduled to come to a WOW Day at Williams Baptist University. Back in those days, they were called WOW Days, which stand for World of Williams. And so just to have a free day off from school, I was going to ride over here with her so she didn't ride by herself. And that was another pivot in my life journey when her and I got to campus. And I can remember walking across Midkiff Meadows headed to Sloan Room 108, or 101 for one of our sessions. It was as if I had this overwhelming feeling that this was where I belonged. This was where I was supposed to be. But I was very confused because at that time, Williams did not have an accounting degree. We did not even have a finance degree. The only degree that they had that interested me was the business administration degree. So I struggled with that because I didn't know what I would do with that degree because that wasn't the path that I wanted to be on. And nonetheless, it was definitely ordained for me to be here. The numbers worked. Now, remember, I'm a welfare kid. So I had full Pell, all the state scholarships that you could get. I did have some outside scholarships. And so this was the one that made the most sense because it was not going to cost my family anything for me to come here. And so I was going to be a business major and try to just work out those details later. And, I was very blessed to have great relationships with my professors at that time, Dr. Summer DePro now and Chris Lowry, that developed great relationships with. And I just fully ingrained myself into the world of Williams. I was involved. I was an RA. I, had great friendships that I still have today, all while working 4 jobs. Because once again, I'm taking care of my own expenses. And so I had 4 part-time jobs simultaneously, working and going to school. And my junior year, Williams launched a finance degree. So I was the first graduating class with a finance major.
Wow.
So that was another point in my life to where I had to learn to trust God, because it made sense then. I'm like, okay, I don't have accounting, but I have finance. And I learned that I love finance so much more than accounting. Accounting gets boring with debits and credits, but finance, that's decision making. And that resonates with me, because you make decisions with money and not just report money and count money. And so I had then made what I thought was going to be my career decision into financial advising, because I wanted to help people. I was trying to, come up with what am I supposed to do for the rest of my life. And so I'm going to help people to manage their money and be a financial advisor. And so that was kind of my career aspirations. And we're at church. We left the church that I mentioned previously. That was my youth group church.
Right. You told us you were going to
during my college year. Yeah, we'll circle back around that. So for a few years, due to just some church drama. Okay, I wasn't going to say that word, but drama. We left that church for a few years and attended another church that was also instrumental in my life. That family was very benevolent to that pastor, and his family was very benevolent. And I worked for them. I mean, they would come up with jobs for me to do, babysitting their kids, or they had a Christian bookstore that I worked at on the weekends. And I'm still very close to that family today. That was the pastor of the church, the different church. And then we circled back around and came back to what I would say the home church. And there was a new family there that was in leadership and that become quite close with our family and became, one of those people that filled in the gaps when needed. And the woman, or the wife in the relationship, she ran the Pregnancy Resource Center in Paragould. At that time, it was called Lifehouse Ministries. And we were at a church potluck, and I was in my senior year here at Williams in the fall time, so the fall semester, and we're at a church potluck, and she is sharing with our family how she felt like the Lord was calling her to do something different, and how the Lord had impressed upon her very heavily that I was to be her predecessor. And so I'm 21, 22 years old, and being told that I am supposed to be the next administrator at a pregnancy center in Paragould. Isn't this funny? This is funny. But remember, I had trust issues with the Lord. And one of my trust issues with the Lord was that I was going to be a career woman. And I wasn't going to get married, and I wasn't going to have kids, because I witnessed hardship with family. And I was going to take care of myself and be in control. And then my senior year in college, the Lord calls me to be the executive director of a nonprofit pregnancy resource center. So, the spring semester of my senior year, I assumed those duties, was able to work out some internship credit with the business department here at school, and was able to work and get college credit and run that pregnancy center that then grew exponentially under my leadership. Now, I had some great help too, but we expanded to being more of a family resource center and a career center, because I, had this business background, and I was wanting to really impact the lives of young families and young children to provide for themselves and to not have to depend on others.
You're going into a ministry to help others get through what you went through.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. I feel like we're now in a psychoanalytical counseling mode here.
And it gets better than this, Dr. Norman.
Well, okay. I want to hear the better. Let's hear the better.
So I did that for about 2 years. And then it was time for me to do something different. I had to learn some really hard lessons in leadership in that role. And my dad was always on me that, getting a CPA was not off the table. It was still, you need to get a CPA. You need the JD. You need to be, a Juris Doctor. You need a lawyer. But I never really resonated with either one of those. But through some of those hardships and leaderships and life lessons, I tell people all the time, friends don't let friends be CEOs at 22 years old. And so I made a pivot and I went to grad school. And during that period of time, I was also recruited to do some other nonprofit work. So I would, because of my experience at the pregnancy center and some of the relationships and networking that I'd built during those 2 years, and the grant writing experience that I'd encountered, I started working with several nonprofits during the next few years. One was being involved in a health coalition in Greene County. So it was a grassroots organization that was trying to address some of the health needs at that time. And there was another nonprofit that I helped launch that was called the Center for Fathers and Families that got involved with training men to be strong leaders in the household. And we were able to do some really good things with that organization through the years. And then because of those relationships, I was then recruited to participate in some economic development regionally, both locally and regionally, and did some work with the W.K. Kellogg Foundation with some Mid-South Delta initiatives, trying to help the impoverished community in the Mississippi Delta. And I did that for about 18 months. And then I received a phone call one day that the local homeless shelter in Paragould was involved in a capacity building program working with the Donald W. Reynolds Foundation, and they were needing some help administratively. Was I interested? Well, we actually knew this director from my childhood because she had been involved with, my family and some aspects of church and, benevolence that my family encountered. And so we had a conversation. And I went to work for the homeless shelter for 4 years.
Where in all this is the career woman going to make a lot of money and be independent and not rely upon anybody?
Well, this is something that the Lord and I are still talking about pretty regularly.
Well,
but it's one thing what I learned in that experience was it's one thing to be a financial advisor to people that have assets or to people that are wealthy. It's another thing to be a financial advisor to people that are homeless.
Yeah.
And so that's where I learned, okay, Lord, I know what it's like to have financial struggles. And I'm going to help these homeless people to become self-sufficient. And that became my mission. And I thought that was going to be the rest of my career, that that's what I was going to do. And I thrived under the nonprofit work and the administrative responsibilities, and I actually enjoyed the rewarding aspects of seeing people actually change their lives. But it was also very emotionally taxing.
Yeah.
Because whenever children got removed from a family, I was there. I was on call all the time. And so I had to respond to crises or emergencies all hours of the day and night. And but also while I was there, we were able to launch a free medical clinic. And I got to see some of the great benefits of helping people that were without health insurance at that time to receive medical care. And so I was the clinic administrator.
So when did you finish your grad degree? Was that in here? I mean, you finished, right?
Yes, I finished.
Yes.
Before I went to, about the time I went to work for the mission, I
MA,
finished.
MBA?
MBA.
Okay.
Yes, I got the MBA. I actually finished my degree in France but I finished my
What?
It was a study abroad type thing.
I thought France, Arkansas?
No, France, as in Europe. So let's see. I finished my MBA in August of 2007, and I was hired by the mission in April of 2007. Okay. So I did have to leave the mission early in that job to go finish my degree and then come back.
So how did you get to Williams? When did this happen, and how did it happen?
Are you ready for this story?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm working at the mission, running the clinic, because it was kind of a sub-organization under the umbrella of Mission Outreach. And I have a board member. So, okay, wait, back up. During that time, I had also, when I was in grad school, I was a teaching assistant in the business building. And so I taught some technology courses in the computer information science department, just as a graduate assistantship type thing. Okay, so I'm working at the mission. I have a friend that works in the science department at Black River Technical School. And this was when the Paragould campus was getting launched. And they were needing someone to teach some basic computer classes at night at that time, this was in the late 2000s. So President Obama had done the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, and he was providing funds for working adults to go back to school to gain new skills. So Black River capitalized on that program at that time and was really focusing on some of their night program classes, and they were needing someone. Well, I had just left ASU doing some of that same work while I'm working at the mission. And so I agreed. So I started teaching night classes at Black River. Fast forward about 4 years, and I have a board member that is a librarian at Paragould High School. And she knew I was teaching night classes. And she was like, our longtime business teacher at the high school is leaving. Would you be interested? Well, we missed out on the part to where I got married. So
I was going to circle back around.
Okay, yeah.
The
So
single
also during
career
that time,
woman.
the single career woman does meet a coach. And so,
okay.
We did get married, and Casey was coaching head boys basketball, but he did all boys sports and then was assistant girls sports at Ridgefield Christian. And so early on in our marriage, he had a pretty demanding job, lots of after hours work, ball games and practices and things. And I had a very demanding job, on call 24/7 and handling crisis. And this librarian at the high school said, the business teacher at the high school is going to retire at the end of this year. Would you be interested? You'd get on the same schedule as Casey. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, why not? And so anyway, she's like, I can get you the job. Well, sure enough, she got me the job. And so I was teaching at Paragould High School. I'd made a career pivot. I'd finally surrendered to the field of education. And I was going to teach high school, and Casey and I were going to have the same schedule, and life was just, going to be good. And then about February of that first year, Chris Lowry, who was my finance professor here at Williams, calls me, and he's like, I know you've been teaching at Black River. I'm getting ready to resign from my job. Do you want my job at Williams? And I said, what? You can't leave Williams? Like, what are you thinking? And he had made a life decision at that time that he was going to go on and get his PhD. And so I first told him no, that I was not interested, that I had finally just settled, into this teaching gig at the high school, and this is what I was going to do. And he told me, he said, I think you should think about it. Well, about a week later, Summer DePro calls me, and she's like, I know you've talked to Chris Lowry. He's leaving. Do you want his job? And I once again told her, I don't think so. Like, Williams is not really on my radar. We just had bought a new house in Paragould, and, we kind of felt like life was finally settling down for us. And I'm just not, thanks for the offer, but not real sure. And she said, well, just come over and talk to me. So
First mistake.
So I agreed to just come to campus. I had not been to campus since I graduated. And so that had been about 7 years that I really hadn't came back to campus. I maybe had come for one homecoming or something. And so it was kind of surreal stepping back on campus, kind of, reconnecting and, seeing my professors and we were just talking about the job. And at that time, I was still really just kind of dead set on, I didn't want to commute to work. I didn't really know that if higher ed was my thing. I was, still trying to figure out the high school thing. And after I left that conversation that day, she said, I still think you need to talk to Dr. Swain. And so she scheduled a meeting for me to come back and talk to Dr. Swain. So I spent some time with Dr. Swain in another session. And I told him basically the same thing. Like, I'm happy. Life is good. Thank you for the offer, but I don't think Williams is, what I want to do. And he told me, he said, Heather, you're not listening to the Lord. You need to go and pray for 2 days and call me back. And I left his office and I was like, how can he say I'm not listening to the Lord? Like, God, I thought we had this thing figured out. Like, this is not right. So God and I had to have a talk. And so I did. I prayed about it for a couple of days, and probably just being stubborn, I waited longer than 2 days to call him back. But
A little passive aggressiveness here.
Potentially. And so I did. I called Dr. Swain back, and I was like, okay, let's talk about this a little more. And so we continued to talk and negotiate and talk some more. And
here you are.
And I eventually said yes. And that was 15 years ago.
Is this the longest job you've ever had?
Ever.
Okay.
Ever.
So, yes, ever. Ever. So.
And I was only going to do this job for a couple of years.
Calling.
Yes.
How, what, when? When did you get a clear sense that God created me, at least for the season of my life, for this? This is my calling. This is a ministry of work and work as ministry opportunity for me. When and how did you come to that realization?
My first year teaching here. So
you actually discovered that call in the midst of doing the job.
Because I was a little stubborn, Dr. Norman. And
it's hard to imagine.
I know,
I'm stretching
right?
Yet. No.
Because I thought that I had everything figured out. Like, I thought that I knew what I wanted. And it's part of that learning to depend on the Lord. And that hands to mouth thing that I had to learn as a kid, that I was able to finally walk out in my vocation. And so it was that first year that I was here that I just really felt like the Lord spoke to me. This is the reason why this was the institution you were supposed to come to as a student. The person that you are today developed because of your time here as a student. And I didn't realize that until I was working here in that year, that first year. And it was here that I learned how much I truly love teaching. I had always, and I didn't really realize it, but I had always taught. Like, I taught the preschool class at church, or, I would teach Sunday school, or, I was
financial advising is teaching.
Yes, and when I was at the mission, I was constantly doing classes for, our residents there, financial classes, life skills, just computers. And I always kind of liked that. But it was here that I realized when I'm in the classroom, I am energized. And I can truly feel the Holy Spirit working through me. And, there'll be days that I'm like, oh, do I have to go teach supply and demand again today? And I'm walking down the hallway, and then something changes when I walk in that classroom. And I just feel energized and refreshed. And I truly feel the anointing of the Lord when I am in the classroom with these students. And I've come to realize, and I share bits and pieces of my life with the students, but I've come to realize that all of these things that the Lord has allowed me to go through, and it took me a while to get there, that it was, the Lord's provision, and he was allowing all of these events to take place. But it prepared me for this place.
Yeah.
Because I can connect with students that have been in similar situations with me, and I can share how the Lord worked in my life and how the Lord can also work in those same miracles in their life.
Wow.
And education truly can change your trajectory, because it changed mine.
I had a trusted mentor. I never worked for him, but through his life and interpersonal interactions, he has a saying, God wastes no life experiences.
And it took me a long time to realize
it
that.
does. And life is a stewardship of those experiences.
It is.
So can I put you on the spot?
Sure.
Can I get personal?
Sure.
Okay, so you showed me a text.
Yes.
For our listeners, today is her birthday. Heather's birthday is today, and her father sent her a text. How are you going to answer that text? So tell them what your dad said. Happy birthday, and then
What would 44-year-old Heather say to 14-year-old Heather, 24-year-old Heather, and 34-year-old Heather?
Now, we kind of jumped into that in the first episode, but I want to dig down a little bit more. Now, the bigger picture. On your birthday, what counsel would you share with those Heathers?
I think my answer would be the same.
Trust the Lord.
Trust the Lord. To just depend on him and to trust the Lord. And for me, that's been a learning experience, because I did not want for myself what I experienced as a child. And I think it would tell 34-year-old Heather the same thing, because I had my son when I was 33, and he's a miracle. He's totally a miracle. And remember, I never wanted to be a mom, because I did not want for my offspring or my children to ever experience what a hard childhood was like. And becoming a mom furthered that spiritual journey of the dependence on the Lord, because I don't know what I'm doing as a mom. I have no idea. Every day it's new journey in the world of parenthood, and just the stewardship of a young life and the responsibilities of that, and having to fully depend on the Lord, because every decision I make impacts that child's life. And I know what some decisions that I wish my parents would have made a little differently, and how it could have potentially changed my life. But God's good.
You wouldn't be who you are.
I would not be who I am today if it wasn't for those experiences.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story, as very personal and painful as some of it is. I'm grateful that you were willing to steward your story for the benefit of our students here in your ministry on this campus, and through your testimony in that ministry to our listeners. You done good, Heather. You done good.
I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
And happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope your husband and your son take you out to a great dinner tonight.
Actually, my mom's cooking. So
there you go.
We're going to have a family dinner tonight.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. Well, enjoy the celebration.
Thank you.
We'll have to have you back later in another podcast. It was an ordeal to get you here, so I know I'm starting now, because it will take a while for that to happen. Will you agree that sometime, somewhere, someday you'd come back? Trust the Lord.
I'll pray about it.
Okay, there you go. And we'll end there.
Okay.